It's good enough to sync. Okay, guys, it has been quite some time. Shalom, shalom. Yeah, no, we've just had to be on our initiation journey, and this is the thing: is that there's gonna be varying degrees of you individuals witnessing this. There's gonna be some of you who really don't know anything. There's gonna be some of you who are more highly initiated than me. Um, I do believe I would have posted the video I'm yet to record first. And if you've seen that, then I don't even know what to really comment on that in respect to the relation to this video. It's just something quite profound that is quite hard to ignore, and it's either gonna put you off me or you're gonna be paying attention, right? And that's the thing of what I'm saying, is that there's still a lot of initiation to go. But yeah, this work that I've produced here, I'm very happy with. I'm very happy for you guys to witness this. Like I said, some of the stuff is just gonna go over your guys' head, but for those of you who have arrived here for the reasons you have arrived here, the glory of Hashem, here we are. Let us commence. A Kabbalistic work by Frater Moshe Yosef Eliyahu Lux. So many of you will be familiar, hopefully. If you're witnessing this, you'll be on this stage. Many of you will be familiar with the concept of the four Kabbalistic worlds, and basically how, in a sense, they mirror the four-letter name, the four-letter hidden name of God, Yod He Vav He, right? And what is very interesting about this correspondence is that we see the world of Bariah, which is the second world, and the world of Azia, or Azaya. They are symbolized by the same letter, right? They are symbolized by the same letter, which is the letter Che, right? And of course, this letter is what repeats itself in this fourfold name, which has many, many, many secrets encoded inside of it. But like I said, very simple. It corresponds to the four worlds. Now, there was no great diagram. On the far bottom left, you're going to see I've drawn a little triangle. You're also going to notice there's a little arrow there accidentally where Bariah is, which is very funny and symbolic nonetheless. You see I've drawn a triangle around Atziluth and Bariah where it says that, sorry. Well, that's the thing, is that Atziluth is actually the world, the sphere of Keter and Chokmah. Right, the sphere of Keter and Chokmah are those spheres where the triangle is, whilst it's trying to tell you that Atziluth is only Keter. It's trying to tell you that Chokmah is inside of Bariah. This is incorrect, right? And the reason I've just drawn this triangle is because there wasn't a better diagram on Google Images, right? But the world of Bariah, which we just mentioned, is only the sphere of Binah, which is that third sphere, right? That third sphere, where it is, of course, outside of that triangle, whilst being adjacent to the bottom of the two inside of that triangle. And again, what's very funny is how basically Keter is a very, very enigmatic sphere to understand, right? And the reason that's even why can I even make that statement is because of many concepts that are going to follow. But to put it bluntly, no one has access to the Father. No one has access to Chokmah. The only real way we can access Chokmah is by the 50th gate, and only the Moshiach is the one who has access to this 50th gate. And there's going to be some of you who understand a bit of Kabbalah who are going to be like, what? You might even get offended because you think I am. I'm telling you don't have access to the true Father. Yes, I'm now telling you you're in a fallen state, right? So it's a bit enigmatic if Keter is above Chokmah in at least chronology, how then we're even talking about how Keter and Chokmah are together, but, we don't even have access to this Sephirot. So it's very, very enigmatic, and you kind of have to put it together. But long story short, we can see that there is a bit of a mirroring, right? If you understand, like, basically the first thing about Keter, how it is this constriction point for this infinite light, yeah, long story short, that is basically why it is inaccessible. The yira, which is the awe, the fear, it just everyone is too fallen. Everyone, if we understand the basics of cosmology, everyone is too fallen to be able to understand that. And the only way to understand it is through the 50th gate. But Binah, the mother, right, because Binah is also known as the mother, wanted to mirror this, right? So it's very symbolic and it's very interesting. I won't comment further than that, but it's very interesting how these two Sephirot are almost two in one world, yet they are one in the same, basically. That's what I'm saying about this constriction point of the infinite light and the true essence of the Father, the true essence of Chokmah, which, again, when we talk about Chokmah, people talking about Chokmah, really all they are talking about is the Shem HaMeforash, right? Which is, again, another enigmatic topic inside of itself, outside of the scope of this video. But it's just, again, it's worth mentioning how these two Sephirot are worlds inside of themselves. How one Sephirot in Malkuth, the bottom, is Azaya, and how this third Sephirot, being one, right, is then the world of Bria, which is called Binah. Right, and as we can see here, where it says in the middle, the four worlds, we can go down and we can see that Bria is just basically Binah. It just is Binah, right? And above where we have Atziluf, again, it's telling you which is Chokmah. And again, in this understanding, if we don't even have access truly to Chokmah, to the true Father, then understanding then Keter is, you can put together why it's very enigmatic. But we have some great diagrams here as well. We can see in the top left how, and comparing that to the ones on the right, how we can see this converging of how the worlds descend. And of course, this is to be understood symbolically. And yeah, we'll get to the next slide. So the 6 red spheres on the left, right, that is the world of Yetzirah. That is the world of Yetzirah. And this world is also called Zeranpin, which is also known as the sun, right, as in S-O-N. But there is, of course, the central aspect of that. So Zeranpin itself is the sun, but simultaneously, when we get one Sephirot to be the sun, it is Tipareth, right, that middle sphere. And it is also known as the small face of God. Now, the angels which are born inside of this realm do not have immortal souls, right? They don't have immortal souls. Right, and essentially, to put it very, for lack of better terms, again, I don't speak Hebrew, that's what I mean. I'm initiated to a degree, but I want to learn Hebrew. I need to learn Hebrew. It's not even as much as it's a want. It goes beyond the scope of just wanting such a thing. No, it's a necessity. This goes, if guys, any of you are watching this, you think you might be more highly initiated than me, right? But you don't speak Hebrew, and you're lying to yourself about many facets of this. Just put 2 and 2 together, because you are deep in Qlippoth. You are deep in the Qlippoth, right? And you are existing inside of this Qlippoth, being happy because of knowledge, right? That is, again, another enigmatic topic. Nonetheless, this world of Yetzirah coexists as a holy, right? It is a holy world and a Qlippothic domain. Why? Because there is no immortality inside of this realm for the things that are born off of this realm, right? So that is the immediate giveaway that even in this this holiest place that basically we have immediate access to, you could say, right? Because as stated here, this is an easily accessible realm to psychics. When you have psychics who don't have any base understanding of any Kabbalistic construct, of any structure, of any hierarchy inside of it, they can't make any sense of it on a more just structured plane. Like, how do they access? How can they receive these things? It comes from this world, guys, right? It comes from this world, and it is basically the base of all Western esotericism, right? Which is, again, me talking about, you may be initiated, you may know a lot of stuff, but I just, dealing with people who believe they are Kabbalists, right? Whatever level of initiated they are, there's just this, and even everyone has to recognize that there's this arrogance. There's this, the receiving of knowledge makes you feel exalted, But we're playing with Qlippoth. It's all Qlippoth, right? Which is just, again, it goes in with why many of you watching this are going to be going to Gehenna, not to install any fears, just the reality. But we're going to get into that, the nature of Gehenna versus other things, which is, of course, the Kabbalistic concept of the destruction of the soul versus just Gehenna. But anyway, this Binah, this mother, she provides an immunity to Qlippoth, right? She basically represents like actual heaven, as in what is accessible to those who are not going through the 50th gate, right? Which, again, some of you, I've just said the 50th gate. Some of you have no idea what that even means. That's fine. We're about to touch on that. Well, it's going to be a long video, but, we're going to get into that. But that truly is where a soul that is, a holy soul, a holy spark that has fallen, but is totally for the redemptive work. That is where they are going to reside post-mortem, right? At whatever level inside of that. And heaven still does exist inside of Zeir Anpin. It's just a lower heaven, right? It really is. Now, immortal souls are basically coming from, and again, this is a bit of a gross translation, but they are coming from Binah, right? This actually touches very deep into the idea of baptism. Is that these holy sparks, they, in their root, is again, it's enigmatic, but essentially they have been born again, in a negative sense, into this mother, right? In that ultimately this mother's root is the father, it is Abba, right? But they have been cast into a type of place, and so they have been born, or for a better term, they've been transmutated and had a birth out of it. So they are still immortal in that sense, but they are suspended even from Chokmah, right? Which it goes into this enigmatic topic of the Shem Hemaforash, right? But Binah is still attached fundamentally. Bariya is still attached fundamentally to its creation, which we're going to touch on this, but it is Zeir Anpin. And no one can truly basically get into this place without an understanding of the sun, right? Which basically is Tipareth, which is another way to understand that it is Jacob, right? Jacob. Okay. Now here, I am, of course, someone who, if you've paid attention to me, I love flow state, guys. I love doing it off the dome. I love all of it. Just, I'm not particularly used to having to read out essays, but I'm gonna do it because these are very, very important, concepts, and it has to be stated in this complexity of it. And if I lose you guys, I lose you guys, as in you who are probably unable to perceive what the deeper implications of everything that's going to be said is, right? So the first secret, which is known to the vast majority, is that the Torah is only really describing the world of Yetzirah, so is in turn being a residual of the created sphere that is Binah, right? I mentioned to you guys how this creation of Zeir Anpin or Yetzirah is from Binah, right? It's from the mother. So if we understand the concept of having to mirror and fragment, then we can easily put together that this creation of Zeir Anpin, which the Torah is describing, is basically the residual reflection of what Sophia has done. So we are getting the son and the mother in tandem pretty much. But again, we have to understand that if this mother is totally 100% holy, 100% immortal, then why do we need redemption? So that is really the secret of why it is describing the world of Yetzirah, through which the whole central protagonist is, of course, Tipareth, being Jacob, right, where God's chosen manifest from. Anyway, okay, so this has a residual of Binah, which is in turn, of course, the word of Bria itself. And so it is in essence a reverse engineered image of the Holy Mother, since what is being described is her creation. Or as the Gnostics call this Holy Mother, Sophia. So now we have this term which is very easy to use, right? Sophia. A secret of this is revealed in the Zohar, As it is stated, the letter Beit is the letter responsible for all of creation, since the first letter Aleph, which is the all letter, the all-encompassing breath, this would seem appropriate to begin the Torah, but it's not the letter to begin, but rather the second letter Beit, which on a literal level means house. This goes in with basically why Binah is this heaven, which people are, anyway. As it is written, Bereshit bara Elohim, right? In the beginning created God. This letter Beit is a deep hint and giveaway that we are not starting, right? In Genesis 1:1, we are not starting from this absolutic holiness. We are not starting from Hokmah, right? Which is the Father. And one may be keen to believe that when entering the mysteries, right? And this is given away, right? The second letter Beit, why this gives it away that we are starting from the mother, why we are starting from Bariah, is because Beit is the first letter to begin Binah and Bariah, and even better, the second letter Reish. Those are the first two letters that literally start Bariah, Beit, Reish, Bariah, Barashit, right? But rather residually descending from the world of Bariah, which as stated is the sphere of Binah, which is also known as Ima, meaning mother, with a value of 42, right? It goes without saying to the initiative, Sophia sought to be like the Father. She wanted to be like Atziluth, Abba, Hokmah, and so attempted to mirror his creation, which was basically all of his highest being, which was she was the highest, right? To which Abba did not need anything but his own infinite nature to create his first sparks, right? So she tried to mirror this, being that he didn't need anything. So she's thinking, I don't need him. Thus Sophia's sin, which is her creation, is known to have been without permission, basically of her own free will granted to her by the Father, and empty of the true Father's presence. Wow, guys, again, this goes into why most occultists go to hell, like, because we are not moving in this presence, we are not existing is a better way to put it. This creation, this anything we need to grab onto, everything we need to grab onto to try and understand where we are is devoid of Hokmah, is devoid of true wisdom. It goes in, of course, heavily with this very lowly construct that is the earth, right? Due to Sophia's attempt to mirror the Father, which is the highest head, the highest crown, she created a dimension of darkness inside of her head, her own, which is her own crown, right? And this is the secret of why the letter Reish follows Beit in Berashit. Reish literally translates on a literal level to the back of the head, referring to unenlightened, dull, and dark crowns, and states, as the Father created sparks from his infinite crown, which is essentially the never-ending light. This goes in with the connection of Hokmah and Keter, right? Creating sparks at a bandwidth capable of understanding and embodying his wisdom, right? This basically goes in with why the water and nor the plurality of the name Elohim in Genesis has no direct explanation for its creation. This is again the great hint, the great hint. And this is the sterile sea of Binah, right? Another name for her is the sterile mother and the sterile ocean, or the sterile sea. And it needed light in Genesis 1:3, and is the evidence of it. It will be explained later that even this light is dark and residual, this light that was created, which is again a great mystery. Genesis 1:2 tells us the world was dark, unformed, and Elohim's plurality was hovering. Yet we know Elohim as a plurality. Again, the question is begged: where hath this plurality stemmed? This in essence goes in with the highest fallen sparks, right? And what it truly is. Again, people don't even question why, but Christians don't even question why there are different names of God and what that symbolizes. This video, I'll state, if you're a certain capacity, like just don't even, right? Understanding will always stand under wisdom, lesser to wisdom, always residual of the infinite wisdom. Thus Sophia in her own crown created a highly inferior residual. For if understanding will always be the residual of wisdom, then the residual of understanding takes us extremely far from wisdom. When such understanding was attempted without wisdom and only with knowledge, which and here's a bit again of an enigmatic topic. Many people should never possess wisdom. Many people should never possess knowledge. And no one really possesses wisdom besides one, right? Besides one. And everything else is, many should never possess knowledge. They can never possess knowledge and should, for their own good, for everyone's good, should never possess knowledge, right? Where the infinite potentialities of the abyss, this is what knowledge does, the infinite potentialities of the abyss of the intellectuality can become exalted, and the positive manifestation of this, why people possess knowledge, is for this is in the name of the redemptive work, right? The whole summarized point of the Moshiach and a secret of Aleph, right? So many many people want to possess knowledge without praising Hashem. Right, many people want to exalt their own intellectualities, and this goes in deeply with a knowledge of hell, right? This goes in deeply with a knowledge of retained individuation inside of hell, right? But we're going to get into that. This dimension of darkness inside of her is Yetzirah, Zeranpin, which she must be the source of light of, especially, and when I mean source, I mean the root of the light of, especially in the name of this future redemption, which is the 50th gate, because her source, her true source, remember, she is 100% holy, right? She's descended, but she's 100% holy, and her light is Abba, which, due to her attempt to mirror, is an image of her, right? Because she tried to mirror what the Father done, so what she has created must be an image of her. Thus, inside the Torah, we have Zeranpin, which is the image of her holiness, right? Which is essentially her root. And again, this goes in with why Zeranpin does indeed have holiness. Whilst I am, in a sense, even demonizing, probably some of you are having access to this knowledge for the first time, whilst you may have, gained some understanding of how things work. Zeranpin, whilst it is a Qlippothic construct, I mean, it's the cards with dealt, right? And it's the holier of the cards with dealt. So hence why we have 6 days of creation in Genesis chapter 1, as we have 6 spheres of Zeranpin. The Great Mother is totally holy, but she was cast out, not in totality, but she was cast out in the name of rectifying what she had done. This basically goes in with what is the Garden of Eden, right? For she had a bastard child, and that bastard, again, Zeranpin, the other name of Zeranpin is son, right? And this bastard child was indeed innocent because it is the byproduct of what she had done, but was the inferior byproduct to govern, as Sophia would have governed worlds naturally if she was with the wisdom of, like, the Father intended, basically, right? And how we understand this is, as the Father has intended for his highest sparks to govern creations in his will. This goes in again with the original state of Adam, which is again enigmatic, right? But yeah, that essentially goes in with why she had no choice but to have spawned a bastard child, right? Because the creation of all of these highest sparks, which she was the highest of, why were they created? There was a divine plan, there was a divine intention, which, had to be first. These beings had to be given free will. Now, we're not going to touch too heavily on that for now, but it's easy to understand that they had purposes that they were meant to do, and then they, goes in with the fallen angels, rebellion, etc., etc. But again, if she's mirroring where she's come from, then if her original created intent was to govern something which she wanted to do without the Father, right? And she wanted to basically act as the father without the father. Then there has to be a representative, which she and the highest sparks would have been, right? Again, enigmatimous. If you understand that, you understand that. It is important to understand Zer and Pin represents this impotent fragment and creation in its holier manifestation. And this is where Adam was cast into when he was chucked out of Eden, right? And who can again be redeemed, right? Adam can be redeemed. For while that created directly inside of Zer and Pin by the bastard child, mirroring what ruling sparks their abilities to create with wisdom as was intended, right? Whilst everything created in Zer and Pin is not immortal, there exists the potentiality of rectification in the mother's original unity, right? In the mother's original unity, which for all intents and purposes is the Catholic Church. Right now, I'm not telling you to go and be a Catholic, right? There's many, we won't even touch on that. Just understand that there is a certain spiritual authority that comes with that church. Malkuth is thus the residual of her, right, being cast out. Right, Malkuth, which is the lowest sphere, which basically represents the world. This is the residual of her being cast out with the potential of redemption, right? Rather than a direct mirror of her cosmology, right? If we understand that, okay, Zer and Pin is the residual of her own cosmology, pretty much, an inferior version of her own cosmology, then Malkuth, the world, is essentially a residual of what she had done, in the fact that she's still totally holy, but she's done something very bad, so there has to now be this potentiality for rectification. This goes in with the 50% holy, 50% unholy nature of this bastard child, right? And thus, the Qlippoth is the residual image, the inferior image of the mortal Zer and Pin, which is basically like a napkin on your lap to catch the dead residue of food as it drops, right? This is natural, right? Since it is merely a consequence of Sophia's several-natured sin, which is death, right? For without wisdom is death, i.e. the Qlippoth is the dead life that lives off of death, just how holy sparks lived basically off of the source, which was Abba, right? Again, as a residual of this mirroring. We understand energy cannot be destroyed, and that all energy's creation is merely a constriction into a point. So the creation of all energy is just some form of constriction into something, right? And that is a point of experience from that which is beyond infinite, i.e. its total root. But we gain a knowledge of hell in knowing energy can be transmutated to forms so far gone from its original state. And this is again all of the fallen sparks. This again goes how there were these absoluthic creations that were then born off of Bariya. Well, if I've just told you they were created by Absolute, how are they created off of Binah? Because this is their second birth. This was their unholy baptism into the dark water, right? And the soul can be transformed simply into the fuel for something else, right? So when it talks about the okay, we're not even going to get into that for now because it's to come. But simply the soul can literally be transmutated, right? The energy is not destroyed. It is just transmutated into something so far from what it was in an original state. For if every Qlippoth in its root is ultimately residually formed from the lack of the Father's presence in creation, and so a soul seeks to mimic this sin of Sophia, i.e. living a totally godless life, well, now we understand the Kabbalistic concept of distinguishing between Gehenna, which is of course a religious Jewish concept, between Gehenna versus the annihilation of the soul. Well, that's, some of you might be hearing that for the first time, that yes, there is a religious Jewish concept of the total annihilation of the soul. And what this basically represents is the unredeemable. The unredeemable. Whilst Gehenna represents hell, at varying degrees, right? Now that's not to glorify and say you want to fucking go there at all, mate. No, right? But there is, of course, again, this goes in with what I mentioned about knowledge. That is where there is still individuation and there is still the potentiality of redemption in Gehenna, in those hells, right? Whilst the lowest of the Qlippoth, that is where the soul is now been totally transmutated to be the food for something in its totality, right? And so this is in turn distinguishing between the individuation in hell, which is the first 7 of the Qlippoth, versus becoming total fuel of the lowest cosmology, the unredeemable, which are the 3 lowest Qlippoth, the antithesis to Arich and Pin, right? Arich and Pin, as we know, right, of course, is the 3 upper spheres, right? So we have 3 lowest Qlippoth, right? And again, it's very simple to understand that. But mainly, the antithesis to Abba himself. For Arich and Pin, which in its lowest is Sophia, still does indeed have access to the Father via the 50th gate. And so the antithesis must be fueled by the basis of her sin, which was pretty much the antithesis to the wisdom of the Father. Sophia still having access to the Father, yet being in a suspended point between beyond infinite Absolute and mortal Yetzirah, right? Bria, the world of Bria being between Absolute and Yetzirah, where she allows life, but facilitates this death. Because ultimately, if we're saying that all of these Qlippoth, when we're rooting it back, has come from the free will of Sophia, right? To which her holiest light, which is the 50th gate, it must flow to her half holy, because that holiness is still in this child, even though he's half. Yeah, that's again enigmatic, but this is exactly how we understand Malkuth in relation to the Shekinah and the Jewish concept of heaven on earth, bringing heaven onto earth, right? Sparks kept alive whilst working in the midst of death for redemption, symbolic of this 50-50 child, right? Of course, in much Eastern philosophy, there is this idea of total moksha, total individuation. What this, let me put it this way, the way to understand that is through what are known as secret chiefs, right? Beings, deities that are going beyond the scope of Keta, which you're basically voiding the potentiality of the Father. That is really what the idea of moksha is, and that is basically what the Eastern philosophy has always not always, but you know what I mean, it's what it's tried to do. That's what their highest heaven is basically escaping, total escaping, not reunification with the Father, total escaping, right? And I'm not saying it's the exact same thing as a secret chief. It's not. It's just understanding what a secret chief is. If you've ever delved into anything like the true masters of the West, right? Who again could only be initiated as they could based on their understandings, but nonetheless we're diverting. As Malkuth represents the 4th world, representing the point of convergence between the worlds, right? So you can basically see how all of this is put together in a beautiful cosmology, right? A beautiful cosmology, right? Because she is suspended between life and death. Sophia is suspended between life and death, between Atziluth and Yetzirah. And this is exactly the mirroring of Azaya, which is Malkuth, which is where the Shekinah is this divine feminine presence of God. It's how it works, because it is suspended between a holier side and an unholier side, right? And it represents the convergence point between the worlds, suspended between holy Yetzirah and 7 unholy Qlippoth, suspended between Sophia, which is, well, we understand now, suspended between Arich and Pin, and the 3 lowest Qlippoth. Now, these 3 lowest Qlippoth basically represent the 8th king of Edom. Edom is Esav, who is the brother of Jacob, who... This here is a very deep Kabbalistic concept. This will go so over the head of many of you, right? But these 3 lowest Qlippoth represent an 8th king of Edom, right? There's 7 kings of Edom. all 7 of them die, and then an 8th king comes along and he's alive, right? And that is the 3 lowest Qlippoth, that part of the cosmology. In this, in a sense, we have 5 stages, which is 4 looking into 1, and that 1 is Malkuth. And this 5 is merely the point of constriction, right? Physical Moshiach, where a 5-pointed figure may take place. Though in this constriction of 5, where is 6? We're talking about Zer and Pin and 6 days of creation. And this is meant to be the Father's original operation. Why? Because Sophia mirrored it. But we get the representative, the innocent yet bastard child. For this 6, in theory, the original ideal, right, which is how we understand Sophia to have attempted to mirror Abba, which is, of course, this attempt to mirror Abba is what the creation of Zer and Pin is. Yet this production of a residual showed an additional factor, right? So first of all, let's just substantiate that this 6 is basically the child, right? The bastard child in his holy and his unholy nature, in his ascending and his descending nature between basically Yetzirah and the 7 lowest Qlippoth. It represents having to do the tasks as the tasks need to be done, right? Just existing in this low state as the progression of redemption manifests perpetually, right? First Malkuth, right? So this residual factor that is shown, first Malkuth, then Qlippoth, right? Which is 7, the Sabbath, right? It's basically talking about the fact that there is an addition in the 7 days of creation, but 1 is rest. Right, and this addition to this creation of Sophia can basically be understood through the 7 Qlippoth, which of course have to be mirroring from someplace. And this is representative of the Sabbath in a holier sense, the day of rest and reflection, symbolizing the lack of selflessness encompassed in Sophia, which is in the Father. This 7 is holy, for it is Sophia out and in her creation, right? Her connection to her child and Shekinah below Yetzirah, right? 6 Zer and Pin, 1 Shekinah Malkuth, 6 Zer and Pin, 1 Binah mother who created it. And this is where the 7 is basically coming from. 7 comes from the fact that she can't truly hide herself from what she's done, which is why the immediate reflection is 7 Qlippoth in nature, which really is the first Qlippoth is just connected with Malkuth. It just is inside Malkuth, and then you have 6. So there's another great mystery. For his 6 is seen in Adam's original state prior to his free will, so the number of man. So we see a great example of how something holy was created, and it was 6 in nature. But he of course was given free will, etc. Story goes as it goes. For this selfishness itself is again the need for Qlippoth, right? The lack of wisdom. There has to be now death. There has to be this eliminatory waste factor, eliminating waste, eliminating what is not of Abba, right? Hence the Qlippoth's immediate residual number is 7, explaining everything I've just explained. Where Sophia's sin cannot hide, right? So we understand 7 to be holy. I'm not saying 7 is an unholy number. We understand 7 to be holy because Sophia is totally holy, and that 7, that Sabbath, is exactly what connects and where she can reflect on what she has done, right? But at the same time, there is an unholier side to that, which is the fact that Malkuth is below the 6, right? And that Malkuth is, of course, the symbolism of her having to now be suspended. And then again, we get a perfect residual in 7 Qlippoth. 8 being the number of the Redeemer and the Redeemers. Moshiach himself, Messiah himself, his number is 8. And this is the connection to the Father in the 50th gate. But 8 is representative of the 3 lowest Qlippoth as well, in their total separation from the potential of redemption that is in the 7 higher Qlippoth still, right? Because remember, Gehenna, these 7 hells, these individual hells, these are temporary. These are seen to be temporary. These are punishments where there is reincarnation after. This is Jewish religious belief. This is Kabbalistic belief, right? It's only this, of course, this idea of total hell exists in the three lowest Qlippoth, right? But it's a bit complicated. It's a bit more complicated. You ignorant Christians and Muslims, and maybe even some of you Jews are watching, and maybe you just don't even know your own stuff, right? I hope you do, right? Symbolizing the lowest, most degraded, bastard nature of Sophia's sin and child, which was of her free will. That's the consequence of her sin, creating separation via the idea the three are only attached to the seven, which is then attached to Malkuth, right? We're dealing with eternal death versus hell. Just how the Father is connected yet separate from the three, which is Arich and Pin, which is then connected to the six Ser and Pin, connected to Malkuth. Now that's complicated, bear with me. This is giving us the total of 8, right? In that Arich and Pin, Zer and Pin, Malkuth, 7 Qlippoth, 3 Qlippoth, right? That gives us a total of 5, right? That gives us a total of 5, which is then 6 when we understand the presence of this child, right? This 50-50 nature of this child and his sovereignty, basically. And in this Moshiach, we receive the other 2 to give us 8. Right, the first being the Father's total detachment from Arich and Pin, right, which we only know due to Sophia's root in the Father. Yet the 50th gate, of course, remains closed as per the Zohar. So as explained, this 7 is in Sophia's holiness, yet also in her sin, but this 50th gate becomes known only through Moshiach's 5-pointedness, and the total ability to neutralize the 3 lowest Qlippoth, which only occurs once again in the redemption of Moshiach to separate it from the 7 Qlippoth, which have redeemable sparks still inside it, which Sophia cannot do. She cannot directly cut off these 3 lowest, for it is her mistake. But Moshiach, which it touches on the nature of this innocent child, which is a very profound mystery, his connection to the highest and the lowest gives us 8. The fact that he is connected to what is connected to Arich and Pin, which is inaccessible to Sophia, whilst having the ability to completely neutralize these 3 lowest Qlippoth. That from we've understood the bastard child to give us 6. Those are the other 2 connections to give us 8. For otherwise we do not have redemption of the Son in the Father, but again a bastard child. Meaning the 8 is Moshiach's ability to connect to the 50th gate, to destroy, to neutralize the 3 lowest Qlippoth. Again, the 7 is 6, which is basically Zer and Pin, with Sophia unable to hide herself, which is the Shekinah in Malkuth, as well as the fact that she has created it, attached from above, attached where she manifests herself below, and shows itself in the Qlippoth. It is more commonly known that 8 is also the number of God's chosen, right? The sparks that fell with Sophia who seek redemption. Hence why there is circumcision on the 8th day. And this is representing the Shekinah, the Malkuth, ascending back up into the mother, right? Or you can even see it as going down. You can see it as simultaneous, right? But we see Malkuth, Yesod, Hod, Nitzach, Tipareth, Gebura, Chesed, and Binah, right? It is nothing less than simultaneous, because as mentioned, there is not this Eastern attempting to gain absolute total moksha in the Kabbalistic cosmology, right? There's not. It is about the bringing of heaven onto earth, the redemptive work. Anyway, that would have gone over many of your heads, and that's just one slide, but that is, of course, the longest slide of my own individual work. There are some other long slides, but I'm quoting from some masters, right, in these other slides, but they are down the line. So now we'll get to some other stuff. So here we have some diagrams just to simplify and to, pardon me. So we have basically the 50-50 nature shown as the 5, right? Arich and Pin, Zer and Pin, Malkuth, Qlippoth, right? And we see that there is this 50-50 presence to this child, right? And Malkuth is the 5-pointed constriction of action, right? It is the 5-pointed constriction where things must take place. And it is with the convergence of Malkuth we can perfectly divide the spheres into two. Right, because of course we have 10 spheres, and it is with this creation of Malkuth that you can get 5 and 5, right? 5 fingers on each hand, which we'll touch on. And Malkuth is the constriction of the divine feminine having to live with her sin, where the work has to take place for redemption. And so this is a very, very profound slide. To the right, we see basically triangular numbers, right? These numbers that are forming the shape of triangles. So Binah, we understand, of course, is the third sphere, right? The child is the dead life. Again, 50-50. He is the dead life. And his number is 6, right? His number is 6. 6 spheres to create Zeranpin, which means sun. And then the central aspect of it is the 6th sphere, right? Created by Sophia, whose number as the third sphere is 3. So we do 1 + 2 + 3, we get 6. So we get a bit of a secret giveaway that Binah is the life, right? Is the life of Zeranpin, right? The holier side, right? If we apply that same principle, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6, we get the number 21, which again is forming this triangle, right? And this is the value of the name Echeye, right? And this is the name given to Moses in the burning bush. And profoundly, right, 21 is also the value of the first three letters, right? Remember, 1, 2, 3, and the second repeats itself again, and the first 3 letters, right, which again is basically, if we want to reduce it, you can just say that is Atziluth, Bariah, Yetzirah, right, the Father, Mother, and Son. That number is, of course, 21, Yod, Che, and Vav, right, and then Che, Isaiah, repeats itself again to create the number 26, right, which is the true value of the secret name. But this first, that triune initial component has the value of 21, which is again the perfect value of the name given to Moses. Now, when we apply that again, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4, all the way to 21, we get the number 231. And what are the odds that, one of the deepest, oldest understandings of Zeranpin, right, which is one of the greatest works of this, which I will quote something from, is of course the Sefer Yetzirah. There's 231 gates inside of Yetzirah, 231 gates of Zeranpin, right, which basically is all of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet interacting with each other, right? And so if we take 22 letters, each as an individual, it means that there's going to be 21 interactions all to each other, right? And so there we're going to get 462 interactions, right? Now, 462 is, of course, double 231, which is, again, the giveaway. Who is the central aspect of Zeranpin, the 50-50 bastard child, right? There is a holy and unholy side to each of the 231 gates, which is basically the mystery of the video I posted all that time ago, before I was receiving these levels of initiations that I've progressed to. I had the requisite understanding, the download, right, free from anything, right, knowing that the world of Yetzirah was Qlippothic, fundamentally, right, like, and as explained, it's a bit of a mistranslation to say it's totally Qlippothic, but it is totally Qlippothic, right? There's a holy and there's an unholy. The holy is simply in the great potential of redemption that exists there, right? As compared to trying to redeem out of the Qlippoth, which is, of course, yeah. Nonetheless, if we take the ordinal value, right, the ordinal value, which is just 1 to 27 of the Greek, valuing letters 1 to 27, because there's 27 in the Old Greek, right? We get 231 for the value of I am the Alpha and the Omega, right? This is exactly quoted from scripture. This isn't a permutation. And this 21st letter, going into that 3 and then into 4, right, is the letter Shin. It has the value of 300, right? But that is the fourth letter of Berashit. And if you understand what Shin basically represents, to put it, in fact, yeah, it basically represents spiritual fire, right? It represents fire, and it represents spirit as a united force, right? And on a literal level, Shin means tooth, which we kind of understand. Of course, we have to have teeth die in order for them to be redeemed in our mouth, which is the oral Torah, right? So that as well is a very profound mystery of it being the fourth letter, which, you know, there's 6 letters in the first word of the Bible, and basically it's in a sense talking about, again, the potential of redemption through the Shekinah, but the fact that there's going to have to be some death, there's going to have to be some stuff that is burnt to a crisp and used as fuel for something else, right? But we take that name, Yod He Vav He, the secret name, value 26, we add that letter Shin into the middle, we basically have the name Yeshua, right? A permutation of Yeshua, which has the value of 326, and this is just a cool alignment, right? But we take 326, you minus the 231, you're left with the value 95, which is the perfect value of the king, right? Chamalek. So 7 Qlippoth, which reflects the creation of Zeir Anpin, but as we mentioned, Zeir Anpin is 6, right? So it begins basically, we understand this 6 and 7 combination, 6 days of creation, 1 day of rest, right? The first Qlippoth is in Malkuth itself, symbolic of what has been mentioned, as in Sophia having to basically be descended and have to live what she's done and have to be unable to attach from it. So Sophia's 6 unable to detach from it. So really this first Qlippoth below Malkuth is many of you will be familiar with this name, Lilith, right? It's Lilith, right? Which is basically the reflection of Binah, or the dark reflection, I should say, of the mother herself, right? Which again is heavily tying in with Malkuth and the idea of Shekinah. And of course, Lilith is a spirit, an idea heavily associated with female promiscuity, right? The Qlippoth reveals Binah is the life of Zeir Anpin and the Shekinah of Malkuth. The 7th day is, of course, in Genesis 2, which is, of course, then separate from the 6 days of Genesis 1. The Qlippoth cannot hide this. The Qlippoth, this Residual, is showing this. Like Sophia tries and wants to hide it, right? Which is, again, why everyone enters the mysteries, everyone enters this thing thinking that they are holy men. Like, I'm not even going to go into this moral bloody lecture, right? You know, we don't need to. I'm not the person for that. I'm really not. I'm just here to give you this initiation. I'm here for you to see what you're meant to see. And if you've seen that last video and the root, and when I say the root, of course, I'm quoting the source. Yeah, that source is a funny source. Anyway, but Sophia tries to hide it. So Psalm 110, why standest thou afar, O Lord? Why hidest thyself in times of trouble? Now 8, we have 7 Qlippoth in one system separated from another system, which is the 3 lowest Qlippoth, right? And these 3 lowest Qlippoth mirror, like a simple answer is, of course, Arich Anpin, right? Antithesis to Arich Anpin, but really it's the antithesis to the wisdom of the Father. And these 7 kings of Edom who died in Genesis 36, but then 1 who reigned, basically is what gives us 8. And this 8 is basically the unredeemable that the Moshiach has to neutralize, has to completely destroy, right? And it lives off of death. And this 8th king, well, how can if I'm saying 7 is 7, well, it's one system, but it's 7, and then 3 is 1 to give us 8. Like, what's telling us this, right? We can see this 3 in 1 by the fact that when the 8th king reigned, right, he has himself, he has a wife, and he has a city, right? So there's your 3. And 8, as explained, is this redeemed Moshiach, the neutralizing connection between the highest of Arich Anpin, which is basically how Sophia is connected to the Father, still remaining 100% holy, yet still unredeemed, still suspended because the 50th gate is closed as per the Zohar. which is the 50th gate is Moshiach, and is the neutralizing connection between this 50th gate and the 3 lowest Qlippoth, as already explained in the Cosmology, right? And yeah, 8 is Moshiach's total power over the Qlippoth, and as explained, this is going in with just the totality of the redemptive work, the covenant, which is circumcision, right? Now here's a diagram. So in the middle where we see Binah, Hesed, Gebura, Netzach, that's as well explaining the 8 days, right? And we have on the left, in smaller writing, we have the 50th gate, which is hidden, right? And this 50th gate, of course, I've put this smaller to show that it's not separate from our reach and P, and yet it is at the same time, which of course is enigmatic, but it's why it's inaccessible, right? There's if you read about the 50th gate, it has no direction, and all the other gates have directions. It's again telling you that there's paradoxes of why it is so enigmatic that no one is having access to Abba, right? Besides Moshiach. And so we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as we see with the 5 bullet points. We see the 6 in this nature of the bastard child, of where he has to be, where he has to go down, where he has to go up and retain in that sense. We see the 7, right, being, of course, basically the mother, right? Going down, we see that she is, of course, connected to her 6 there, right? And then we have as well the 7 to show that we have, I mean, the 7 is probably the most complicated part to understand just in this diagram. I've done it with silly little lines, but yeah, everything has been explained before. This 7 is shown by the fact that the mother brings herself down into Malkuth, right? Which again is really talking about the 8 and the redemptive work as well, but it's just showing you that this Malkuth, where the Shekinah is 1 below 6, and how she, of course, is 1 above 6, and how that is reflected in the 7 Qlippoth, right? Which again is against 6 and 1, since the first Qlippoth is inseparable from Malkuth. So 7 is Sophia's inability to hide from her sin, which is her half child, but is also Malkuth, as has been explained. And what is very interesting, okay, so here's a bit of an enigma as well, is that the tree of life that we have, well, the one that we usually get in Western esotericism is like an Asiatic tree. It's like the lowest fragment of the tree. Not to say it's totally incorrect and it doesn't have its values, and you can't meditate, or just understand that you're meditating on you're meditating on residuals. Just understand that. That's all you need to understand. And it's the same with this tree of Yetzirah, right? This is quite residual. There is room for improvement, is probably the best way to talk about it, right? But in all of the depictions, what is brilliant to say, the reason I even said that is because in all of these depictions, what seems to be in unanimous consensus, because again, there is, even in the Sefer Yetzirah, if you go to buy the most basic copy, you're going to see that there hasn't even been agreement between the highest rabbis, right? So that's as well talking about how there's room for improvement. But there's unanimous consensus that what connects Yesod, what connects the bottom of the 6 to Malkuth, is always the letter Tav. And Tav is, of course, the most exterior letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And when we spell this letter out phonetically, right, of course, Tav has a value of 400, but Tav is Tet and, no, not Tet. So Tav is Tav and Vav, right? You get 406, because Vav has the value of 6. And this is profound in that it is the same value in Greek as Eve, right? But this is also the same value as Cush, right, who was the son of Ham. Now, we have to get into a little bit of anthropology, right? We're not going to go on too much of a tangent, but again, this 406, which is the value of Cush, which is the value of Tav, has the same value as thigh, which is also to be translated as a side, right? But we understand that the thigh is quite an exterior part of the body. It is. And that is why it is also synonymous with side, right? It's also a bit of a giveaway. And inside of that, we understand that, without going on too much of a tangent, Egypt, right? We have to touch on Egypt. and what Egypt really represents, which for all intents and purposes is very much connected with hell, which again goes in with what the Bible is talking about, why all these prophets being in Babylon, being in Egypt, being in these places of exile, being in these lowly states, yet receiving revelation, all of these things, having visions of God. This is really the giveaway of the initial point of what the Torah is really talking about. But if we understand anthropologically Egypt, why the fucking we was kings even exists, part of that comes from Kush, but anthropologically, right, we get modern science always trying to tell us that Africans are the oldest people. Africans are the oldest people. Now, I'm not gonna fucking even comment on that, right? I'm not gonna comment on modern science and all of its innovations, right? I'm gonna show you an explicit contradiction from basically how anyone who is intellectually honest and involved in any study of Torah, anything along these lines, if we remove the face value and understand the deeper mystery, the deeper symbolism of there being 3 children of Noah, right? And we of course understand that in our modern consensus, right? Japheth is supposed to have formed Europeans and also touches on Oriental types of people. Then we have Shem, which is of course supposed to represent Semitic people, which of course we understand that Western Europeans are the 10 lost tribes. But Ham is supposed to represent Africans, and Ham is of course, he is the lowest child, right? But he is the youngest child. So Ham is supposed to have formed Africans, yet he symbolically is the youngest child. How does that make any sense when these Africans are supposed to be the oldest, and everything science is trying to do is trying to prove that? And I'm not going to say this evidence is right, this evidence is wrong. I'm speaking to all of you guys who understand Torah to whatever level, and you understand that this is the truth. How is Ham the youngest child, yet Africans are supposed to be the oldest? It's because and this is the mystery. It's not talking about blacks, basically. They're always trying to say that blacks are the oldest. No, not at all. If we understand what Egypt is and why Egypt is seen as such an unholy place, it's because the children of Ham were the ones who mixed with pre-Adamic humans. Now, that is a mystery as well. And I have to expound upon that. That is a mystery, right? In that there are animals in the Garden of Eden prior to Adam being kicked out of Eden. And as I've told you, Eden is, well, remember, he had power over all these animals. Adam in his original state had power over all of these animals, yet he's then cast out into another place. There's very, very, very powerful mysteries inside of that. Very powerful mysteries inside of that. And like I said, it basically touches upon pre-Adamic humans, which is how some people can be the oldest humans, yet also the youngest. And when we then actually touch on anthropology, that's where it does get a bit trying to hide some things. For example, the haplogroup E1B1B, E1B1A, right? Again, that's not the canon scope of this video. But when we understand that Egypt, right, and especially Kush, remember Kush, he is where Nimrod has stemmed off of, right? We can see depictions of the original North Africans. And we have to just understand that these children of Ham created the youngest, yet simultaneously oldest species of humans. And this goes in with why Egypt was seen as such an unholy place. Because as time went on, these Kushites, right, who were a thigh, who were a side, who were a basically, well, yeah, just below Egypt, just below the south of Egypt, the furthest point of Egypt, you now have the kingdom of Kush, which was ruled by the Phoenicians, right? It was ruled by the Canaanites. Was a massive slave hub, right? It was a mass mining operation, which is well why anthropologists don't actually understand why Kush had all of this wealth coming out of it, yet didn't get any power pretty much until supposedly the 25th dynasty, which again didn't last very long at all. Which, again, when you look at depictions of people like Amanirdas, again, this it's just very funny. Certain things are very funny. Long story short, yeah, Kush is basically the children who created a lot of blacks as we know them today, especially in East Africa, right? Heavily connected with East Africa, and here is the unholiness. These children of Mitzrayim, especially down to the south, this is where we was kings have some fucking, there always has to be an element of truth in something, right? There always has to, especially when you can see certain evidences, especially when you can literally see that there's like particular depictions, right? So many things are stretched. Like there's a wooden head of I can't remember her name, but there's this wooden head where they try to say that she's an African when all it is a wooden head. So so much truth stretched and so much fucking bullshit, right? But there really is an element of truth for you guys who do care about history and really want to fucking deny that, there weren't any blacks in Egypt, there was nothing. No, guys, to the south of Egypt, they were mixing with Kushites. Like 1 in every 5 at a minimum would have been mixed at some part, like in their lineage. One of them would, like, whatever percentage of their DNA would have been something to do with Kush. This isn't a debate, right? That might offend some of you guys who are really, I know I'm gonna have a lot of you guys who care a lot about the racial stuff, which of course I care about true history, right? And when there are stupid claims being made about stupid things, you have to debunk said things. You have to actually apply critical thinking. And this is such a mystery of why there is this unholiness in Egypt, why there is this unholiness in Ham. These youngest children that science tries to tell us are the oldest. It is representing, and again, the fact that Kush has the same value as thigh, side, right? Again, the same value as Eve, the divine mother, the same value as Tav, the most exterior part of the alphabet, which one thing that the letter Tav really symbolizes is carbon. Now, if you understand who are the most carbonated, dense, remember carbon is just extraordinarily dense light, who are the most dense people on the earth. Yeah, we don't need to go into this. Nonetheless, right, that is just what I've revealed to you there is both Kabbalistically and anthropologically profound, right? You'll never read the Bible again when you understand it's only talking about white people, white Caucasian skinned people, not just European, just Caucasian skinned people is what the Bible is talking about, right? Again, and then it goes in with the Ishmaelites being born off of Hagar, the Egyptian slave, not the Egyptian noble. Not the Egyptian noble, the Egyptian slave. Right. So Israel represents the Shekinah, right? The children of Israel represent, not the children of Ishmael, the children of Israel represent the Shekinah. Profound. We understand this. We understand that simply not just the children of Israel represent the Shekinah, but they are, the word Israel is synonymous with Shekinah. But then we understand that Jacob equals Tipareth, right? The central aspect, this circular middle part. But then Jacob is given the name Israel. He's given the name Israel, but we understand that Israel is the Shekinah, which is Malkuth. And really there's an interlink of the Nukva, which is heavily connected with Yesod, right? But this is again talking of the point mentioned prior. This perpetual redemptive work. And the fact that I've given you this huge connection between Eve and the most exterior parts of humans, right? Now we understand very much the redemptive work of Miriam and Aaron speaking out against Moses for being with a Cushite. I am black but lovely, right? Again, the Queen of Sheba. Like, when you understand that the Queen of Sheba was basically a mixed race woman, like, whatever you want to say, of course they translate it wrongly as I am black, right? They translate that wrongly. What it's saying is I am dark. What it's saying is I am mixed with pre-Adamic humans. That is in my genome. Because especially these Canaanite nobles who went and, for example, ruled over Cush, the Phoenicians who went and ruled over Cush, you have to understand that genetically, like as soon as there's an intermix with something that has happened to whatever extent, it's in their DNA, guys. It's in their DNA, fundamentally. And this is also another mystery of Asenath, which if you don't know who Asenath is, that's fine. Anyway, right? It's symbolizing the lowest redemptive work, the lowest of low redemptive work. That's really what it is talking about. That, like I said, the earlier comparison that the Eastern philosophy is really trying to escape, whilst all of this Israelite, in origin, Kabbalah is about redemption. It's about bringing God down to here, trying to rectify what has been done. And essentially, if we have now equated, of course, Tipareth with Israel being Jacob and that being Malkuth, well, we have established such a powerful link. But really what we have established is the ability for these, because as well, remember, the redemption happens in the Shekinah and in Tipareth, happens through the Son, right? We have really established the basis for Israel being the 49 gates of Binah, right? Which again, linking that back to 7 and Sophia, well, 49 is simply just the square of 7, right? Now, the 12 tribes of Israel are, of course, coming from the 12 sons of Jacob. There are 2 permutations, like you can add a Yod to Benjamin, and I believe you could add another Vav to Zebulon, right? But nonetheless, we have 49 letters, and that's the thing, is that the Benjamin and Zebulon are still perfectly spelled without those 2 little letters. There are subtle little nuances of how you can spell different things, and it is the exact same thing pretty much in Hebrew words, right? But we have 49 letters, like we've just established. We have 49 letters of the tribes of Israel, and we have just equated that to the 49 gates of Binah. And as we have stated, these immortal souls, God's chosen, right, the ones who are meant to be doing the redemptive work, right, which again, this really touches on a mystery of why people talk and say about why the Torah was received in Egypt, right? And how when then people talk about, okay, well, what was in Egypt, like what like, and it's, it always goes back to fallen angels. This goes in with the redemptive work, and it's very, very, very powerful stuff, guys. Like I said, 49 letters of the 12 tribes, 49 letters of the 12 sons of Jacob, and 49 gates of Binah. And these gates of Binah are basically the storage unit of these souls. That's a very easy way to understand it. Or another way to understand it is a constriction of light, constriction of the holiest light, which again can be understood as the word fragmentation or even residual. So here we have light inside of darkness. This is such a profound, we've got some really cool numerical stuff coming up, but this here is very, very profound. So as mentioned, there is no direct explanation for the creation of this dark water in Genesis 1:2. If we are to believe that these waters were by default created in the heavens, mentioned to be created in Genesis 1:1, then we have fallen right into the cosmology of the Gnostics, right? Because it is stated directly in Genesis 1:2, the heavens and the earth are unformed, void, and full of darkness. How does that make any sense, guys? How does that make any sense if we are coming from Atziluth? No, this is just straight evidence, straight in your face evidence of the sin of Sophia. Which again, going back to this last slide here, if we understand the most exterior of the creations of the sins of Sophia, and again, we're touching on pre-Adamic humans, right? But for the darkness is assumed before the light. This is very important, that the darkness is assumed before the light, because it's what validates the prior point right above in the bullet point. Similarly, we see a huge interlink of Sophia with the earth, right? Because the earth and the heaven are not separated. This again touches on this idea of Eden, what really is Eden. And for all you fucking dumb Hitler lovers, like, you fucking talking about Hyperborea and all this fucking stuff. Like, guys, Hitler was, you know what? I don't even want to talk about Jesuits. I don't even want to talk about who really runs the world and X, Y, Z. But like, you know, if I'm again to you guys, don't just think I'm shitting on, like, you guys are fools if you don't see this. You guys just, I love the fact that we love our people, but bloody hell, lads, like, get your act together. Understand what the fuck this cosmology is talking about, right? I know multiple instances where I've seen on social media, on Twitter, just these nationalists who just talk about reject Abraham. They don't even know that they're the lost tribes. It's insane what's going on. It's just delusion, and it's really the mastery of Jesuit psychology and dialectics, which we're not going to touch on, right? But we see, of course, the huge interlink between Sophia and the Earth, which, though not yet it hasn't been distinguished chronologically, like the name Malkuth, the formation of Malkuth as individual, we see it as still intertwined with the heaven, which is, of course, affirming the previous and future slides. For the heaven and the earth are one, but in Genesis 1:6, the firmament is created. In Genesis 1:7, the firmament is then used to divide the higher and the lower waters. And in Genesis 1:8, heaven is given to the name of the firmament, assuming a new definition, right? Assuming the prior connection between the heaven and the earth as mentioned, which again is talking about where we are really starting from, the sin of Sophia. The sin of Sophia, right? All you flipping self-claimed Aryans who hate every other race of people. Listen, what I have said prior, right? You would think that I totally hate a certain type of people, whilst I particularly do disfavor those people, as I disfavor multiple types of people, right? Including a type of people that I take a lot of knowledge from what they have done, in keeping a fragment of it, as in Indians, right? No one likes Indians. That's fine, right? It's just to be known. You have to critically assess races for what they are, right? But you know, these people, these fucking Hitler, they fucking hate other types of people with their absolute pure heart to the highest extremity, not understanding that they are still, whilst they are of course lost Israelite, chosen, etc., whatever you want to say, it's not like you're not fallen, guys. It's not like we're not in the same fucking construct as them. Like, this goes in with a bigger picture, but I don't want to go on too many tangents. Anyway, the light created and mentioned in Genesis 1:3, right, is then separated from darkness. This is, of course, the title of the slide. Light inside of darkness. Light inside of darkness, right? And it is separated in Genesis 1:4. And so this light has come from darkness. I'm not going to expound upon that. There's been enough stated in the prior slides for you to put the pieces together. But here we have just such beautiful and clear numeric evidence. It's uncanny. Because when we take the full purest value of Genesis 1:3, meaning let there be light and there was light, it is the exact perfect value and divided Elohim between the light and between the darkness, which is a portion of course, Genesis 1:4. It has the exact same value of 813, the full verse, and this explicit part where it is literally saying about the and what you need to understand, if you don't understand anything about Hebrew, is I didn't just decide to, let me just take the word and. Like, the word and is literally symbolized by the first letter Vav. If you look above that 813, where you see Elohim, right, you're going to see the first letter Vav and divided Elohim, right? That's how the Hebrew language works. This is such a pure section of the language that gives this value. For you guys who don't have that deeper, it's not even a deep understanding, it's basic understanding, right? Bereshit, of course, has the value, the first letter of Genesis 1:1, sorry, the first word of Genesis 1:1 has the value of 913, right? And it is worth mentioning, right? It is worth mentioning that the lowest of the Hebrew letters, which is the 19th letter, Kof, has a value of 100, which is, of course, the separating difference between this and then the first word, which to say it easily, it represents the whole process of the sin of Sophia, really. That first word, Bereshit, there's so many mysteries encoded in just that first word alone, right? Which, by the way, it is lastly worth mentioning, in fact, because I don't know if I did expound upon the Queen of Sheba, Moses taking a Cushite. This, if you understand the mystery of that and why that exists, that is really, really talking about the deepest part of the redemptive work. Because, again, we have a lowest of low in incarnate principles representative as humans. Right, that is so profound when you see that for what it is. Right, that is actually the key. That is one of the major keys of telling you the true power behind someone. And this is a theory that I have as well. The fact that Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, the fact that Sheba is quite literally in the name of David's wife that he stole. That is as well another bit of an indication potentially that even, like that is a real mark of understanding the deepest mysteries. Like, some people will read that, some very, very uninitiated individual, like I said, these people who want to reject the Abrahamism, jeez, that is mispronounced terribly, but they want to reject the Abrahamic doctrines, anything Abrahamic, they want to refute it, right? And they would read something like that Moses took a Cushite as a wife, right? Which basically is representative, again, it's in Egypt. It basically represents everything I said before in why Egypt was unholy, in that you have these people to the south that really did start mixing with Cushites, right? At certain points in certain times of the anthropology, which of course the water source, the Nile, is literally then coming down from those children of Ham, right? This really would be what something like someone reads that and they're like, chuck it out the window, mate. Chuck it out the window. What do you mean? What do you mean that the man Moses who married a Cushite wrote the Torah? They have access to that. They're going to reject it beyond reject it. They're not going to see the deepest, profoundest mysteries of that, which is fine. We're not here for those people. As much as those people genetically will be my brothers, and of course inside of this we are going to be taking a more and I don't want to use the word genetic, but anthropological and, just ancestry, true ancestry, true anthropological. Again, who are the lost tribes? It is us. Like, we're taking that stance, and those people who are going to reject it are going to be those who reject it. But here we have the concentration of 5 as per the Sefer Yetzirah. As per the Sefer Yetzirah. And this is the quote directly from the Sefer Yetzirah. 10 Sephirah of nothingness. Wow. We have 2 grand mysteries inside of that. In the number of 10 fingers, 5 opposite 5, with a singular covenant. Guys, what is the first basis? In fact, it's even astrological. The 3rd house is the first house that really represents your ability to enact will. And if you're going to talk about what part of the zodiac or what part of the house system represents the hands, it's really talking about just the free will that was given to Sophia and how it can be void of Abba. 5 opposite 5 with a singular covenant, precisely in the middle, in the circumcision of the tongue and in the circumcision of the member. Now, what is below is quoted from the commentary in the Sefer Yetzirah, right? Creation is said to have been accomplished with God's fingers, as it is written, "When I see your heavens, the work of your fingers." Psalm 8:4. Although the spheres are typically divided into 3 columns, right? Which, if we go back, we see clearly three columns. And really what this is talking about is how the constricted 5-point nature of the Messiah, right? It, again, is the secret of Malkuth, which Malkuth, of course, gives the 10 to allow a divide of 5, put the pieces together. Although the spheres are typically divided into 3 columns, they can also be arranged in 2 arrays, meaning they can be put into a binary nature, one of 2. One to the right and the other to the left, When the Sephirot are in their normal state, arrayed in 3 columns, they are at a state of equilibrium. But when the Sephirot of the central column are moved to the right and to the left, as to divide the Sephirot into 2 arrays, a powerful tension is produced. Right? When they are in such a mode, powerful spiritual forces can be directed and channeled. Therefore, in many places where God interferes, it says for, but I meant to put God, where God interferes directly with the physical world, the scriptures speak of God's fingers or hands. And of course, 5 fingers on each. And here we have, my hand has founded the earth and my right hand has spread out the heavens. Isaiah 48:13. Before such a creative act could take place, all the Sephirot had to be polarized to generate tensions and force. And that is the end of the commentary. We're not going to comment too much upon that. What the commentary is the commentary alone, dissecting this, right? But I'm going to add some additional things which are not stated in this commentary at all, right? This is my own understanding. This is my own wisdom. So the circumcision of the tongue here is heavily referring to the oral Torah, right? And it is also referring to the ability to speak and to actually channel words of holiness, right? For your mouth to truly be a gateway, right? It is also a reference to the eternal covenant with the Israelite people, which is again a hint at the redemptive work, and to which, of course, we find 2 polarizing opposite cherubim on top of the Ark of the Covenant. These are the 2 chief angels, Metatron and Sandalphon, right? And this first tongue circumcision is hinting heavily towards Sandalphon. As we see, of course, 2 circumcisions are in reference, right? And the second circumcision, the circumcision of the membrum, is a heavy, heavy reference to Metatron. And the reason for this I won't be explaining. And it's not, of course, quoted, it's not mentioned, it doesn't mention the angels at all, doesn't mention any of this connection. And you must perceive what I'm saying. And here we see clear evidence as God's intervention being a constriction. And what is Messiah, what is Moshiach besides this? A 5-pointed constriction intervention from the divine. And of course we understand the 5th Sephirot to be, if you see, you see. Now we have a work from Louis-Claude de Saint Martin. Now, he didn't write a book on the 50th gate of Binah. You can't just go and buy Louis-Claude de Saint Martin's 50th gate of Binah book. This is a rare extract, right? It was only after the square, and by the way, this is very, very profound. There are many, many different nuanced hints, just very powerful things in this. It was only after the square, right, which is an astral material fragment of the spirit 7, that the operation of the octenary, being the number 8, was able to be accomplished, right, which is meaning the true combination of holiness in matter, which is the descent, which we've explained from the 50th gate. The 49 gates of Binah opened by Solomon and also Moses, right, who, remember what I said before, about how those 2 men are the 2 clearest. Remember, Yosef and Asenath is a bit of a hint, right? David is also a bit of a hint. But Moses and Solomon are explicitly referring to being with specifically, of course, women, right, that are of pre-Adamic, Hamite, newest, oldest nature. Right? Again, talking about the fact that these souls, these sparks, are going to be contained in these gates of Binah. And if we understand where those pre-Adamic humans would have been created from and are not in the same, for lack of better terms, level as God's chosen, right? Or the sons of Noah, the actual children of Noah. Here we have a great mystery, that both of those 2 men were the men who opened the 49 gates, who gained access to the 49 gates. They had to have received their Sabbath, right, their day of rest, meaning separation, elevation from Zer Anpin's descent, before the 50th opened, right, which of course is Moshiach. The work of the octenary can therefore be clearly known only in the spirit of the number 50, because then the number of iniquity, which he attributes as 4, which is a more unholy side of 4, kind of reference to Isaiah, especially in that it's 40 and then 9, which is 10 talking about Isaiah, which is also a reference ultimately to the true root of Sophia, similarly, but nonetheless, don't want to go on a tangent. And the number of matter, which he attributes as 9. These numbers are dispelled by the strong generative influence of unity which comes to take their place, and the strong generative influence of unity is basically the churning constrictive generator that is 5 to the power of 10, which is of course then working on a base of 0, right? Again, going in with 10's connection back to the Father, but also the redemptive work of Malkuth. Again, these are all things that I'm putting together for you guys. These are all explicit hints that he's basically leaving that you have to infer. Remember, this is as well translated from Old French. And it's a punishing force like no other working for the reparation. Now, how many eyes it takes to read the numbers? Who could ever believe that 50 is equal to the number 8? We must also be careful to look at this unity which only joins 49 through an octenary connection. Nothing is separated in the order and operation of this divine metaphysics. Unity unites and blends with the septenary, and that is all we can know here on earth. The Son and the Spirit, which is basically the Mother and the Shekinah, right, are all that are granted to us. Here you have one of the greatest, most influential Christian mystics, who has literally, his works have founded orders that exist till this day. They're jokes of orders, but that's a whole other matter, right? Yeah, he's telling you we don't have access to the Father. He's literally telling you Gnostic cosmology. Just that's amazing, right? As for the absolute unity or the Father, no one has been able to see or will see in this world other than in this octenary, which is indeed the only way we can reach him. He's basically again affirming everything that has been stated, that the 50th gate is the only way to the Father, which is ultimately the connection of Sophia's 100% holiness whilst being descended, because it is unopened and only opened through Moshiach. Sophia's redemption and redemption of her child, right? That is really as well, of course, what it's talking about. And thus the Saviour said, "No man knoweth the Father except the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son reveal to him." And this is also a bit of a hint. No man knoweth the Father except the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son reveal to him. This in here is also encoded, basically Binah, right, which I won't expound upon, but encoded in that the revealing, he reveals to him. The revealing has to be done, of course, through himself, but that is his connection in as well. It is assumed into Bria, into Binah. And then we have so here, no man knoweth the Father except the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son revealed to him. This is also suggestive that those involved with the Messiah will face the harshest witness, for they become known to the Father himself. And this can basically be dual-sided. This can be seen in two ways. That those who become known in the incarnate of Moshiach, of Christ, right, will face the harshest repercussions for negatives and also the greatest spiritual blessings, which really, if we just want to appeal to very base Christians, this goes in with why the apostles would die. They would die for the Moshiach, right? Because they understand that they became known to the Father himself, which is a game to not be played with, pretty much, right? My Father is then greater than I. So he's saying that he's revealing it to, he reveals to the Father, and then he's saying that the Father is greater than himself. And then he says in John 10:30, I and my Father are one, right? So the two statements here are not contradictory with the first, but they are affirmative of the two. But then the last two are, of course, contradictory, saying my Father is greater than I, but I and my Father are one. On a very surface level, it's contradictory. And Louis Claude de Saint Martin says, the contradiction in the last two quotes disappear from the illumination provided by the numbers. 50 is for the first passage, and 1, he uses the number 1, but it really means unity. Unity is for the second, and 8 is basically being the mode of operation. Whoever knows the relationship between names and numbers after that will judge what he can expect from his faith in the name of the repairer. The number lets us understand through intelligence that this being is the universal depository, the 50th gate, of all the treasures of the divine essence, of all the treasures of the true divine essence. Right, basically again saying that the Moshiach is the 50th gate himself. Right, the name makes it understood by the fact that it is the active and operating principle of every work and action. The name by which the Father grants to all those who ask him by this means and with confidence. Right, so this is assuming as well both the power of Yeshua's name, showing that his name, just saying his name alone, is some form of evocation, has some form of power, far more than regular men, though of course he takes the form of a regular man. But the fact that and that's a whole other thing, like I said, that's a whole enigma. Him being a regular man, him not being a regular man is a whole enigma, right? But the fact the name of every Mashiachim Gilgul must be able to ring bells and have a divine authority in its cadence. Now that of course will be very unappeasing to regular Christians, right? But this is a whole thing of how Jews even come to understanding Christ, right? That's very complex. It's a whole scope outside of this topic. But without me, you can do nothing. You can do nothing. Without my name, you do not have access to the 50th gate. That's basically what it's saying and alluding to, as well as, of course, the power behind it. The number 50 also tells us why the Savior said in John 16:7, "It is useful for you that I leave, for if I do not leave, the Comforter, Holy Spirit, will not come to you. But if I leave, I will send it to you." Now, this is just the greatest affirmation. And what is amazing is when you arrive at certain conclusions and then you find works that are actually evidenced after what you have received, your conclusion, your gnosis, right? The knowledge that is rooted in wisdom, right? Which, yeah. But essentially what this is talking about, of course, is the 8 and the neutralization. And I'm not even saying that he's explicitly referring to this. I'm not even saying that he's reached this conclusion, but this is just, again, we understand that him being gone, him arriving and then being gone, talks about the ability that, escaping those three lowest, the initial process, the works that began and were fulfilled as they needed to be fulfilled in that time. Now, the Greek for the Comforter in this instance, right, when we do a reverse ordinal, meaning when we put the first value as 27, the first letter, and just swap it, right, very, very, very pure and valid cipher still, right, because there will be some who only want to use standard gematria, which you won't get anywhere. You'll get somewhere, but you won't really get anywhere. Nonetheless, the Comforter, which basically is, of course, reference to the Holy Spirit, has the value in Greek of 166, and this is the ordinal value. This is the ordinal value, the 1 to 27 value for Elijah Sandalphon. What does that mean? Again, I mentioned Sandalphon earlier, but if you understand, just already have researched, is probably a better, because some of you will know this, but you may not understand it. Elijah, the prophet Elijah, when he went up in his chariot to heaven, he turned into the angel Sandalphon. Right, that is Kabbalistic knowledge. That just take it or leave it on that front. I'm stating what is there. As long as he was busy preparing his work, unity and the septenary concentrated together within the bounds of our lower realm and could not display their full effectiveness. Right? Could not display their full effectiveness. This really goes in as well with his rejection. I won't expound upon that. But what he's saying here is very powerful evidence for why he was rejected, which touches upon deeper mysteries, right? And this is an explicit reference to Yeshua having a normal human or even normal spark of a soul. Now, that is, of course, not really true what I've stated. It's a bit of a, if you take it at a literal level, it's a gross mistranslation. It's just talking about what he has to put himself down into, which validates many as well ideas of regular dogmatic Christianity, right? And the fruits of their virtues grew secretly until they had reached their full realization. When that time came, when unity loosened from his shackles, could reach his divine center, right? And this is reference to a state of redemption that was completed in the first coming of Christ. And the septenary could embrace the entire circumference of the circle he had come to regenerate, right? Reference to the Father's wisdom, reference to basically the gate of Binah, the 50th, and its connection. It was therefore beneficial to his apostles and to the world that when unity returned to his source, he left the septenary the free power to put into action all the virtues which had blossomed within him, and charged it in consequence to teach all things and all truth to his elect. Now, this is a very, very, very deep, mystical, encoded bit of work written here. It's essentially referring to him having to descend and put himself into this state to which he had to basically do a certain type of work, but that work, whilst greater, was also inferior at the same time. Quite paradoxical, right? Because inside of that work was done what was needed for then his leaving to have the profound effect that it had, right? Which, of course, certain things were spoken by Christ. You guys don't listen to me, your third temple's gonna, third temple, that's gonna be erected at some point, but, your temple's gonna be destroyed, all of these things. And then also came that, I believe it is Matthew 21:43. I haven't quoted it here, but Matthew 21:43, when he says that the kingdom of God will leave the Jews and go to a people that is receiving its fruit, which really is the exiled 10 tribes, right? That's really what's talking about, the Christian West, which there are also many, many lost tribes in like, for example, a lot of Yuda is in Argentina, right? It's not just Western Europeans, even though those people really are heavily connected with that, but as in being Western Europeans. Whilst upon his returning to his father, he took up once more all his majesty and splendor, right? This is quite a either direct or indirect reference to Jacob's ladder, and to return at the end of time, right? So it's saying he had to come down in order to do certain works, right? And then had to leave so that those works that he done on the earth could actually be realized for what they were, and surrounded by the glory to operate fully. And this is as well a reference to the redemption of Israel. Before both man and the universe, what the septenary would have operated partially and gradually in the space world, which is again basically just what I said, right? In that if he didn't come down, right, then what happened after he went up couldn't have happened, because the septenary 49 would have been operating in a mannerism that wasn't needed to progress, or wasn't sufficient to progress in the way that progression needed to happen. He that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he also do, and greater works than these he shall do, because I go unto my Father. Right, this as well is the affirmation of just what I've said, and it also hints at the previous point. It hints at Gilgulim, it hints at Gilguls, which take it or leave it on that front, right? And then, and whatsoever ye shall ask, in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. And this as well is a reference to the fact that Sandalphon is the angel who is the deliverer of prayers, which, he is the angel who stands in Malkuth and touches all the way up to the crown, right? It's a very profound mystery, but here you have everything that has just been said affirmed parabolically, directly through scripture, understood mystically both by Louis Claude de Saint Martin and deciphered in its true depth by myself. This superiority of works that is promised is conceived when the octenary, 50th gate, then reunited with the Father, will be able to provide those that call upon him with the powers and strength of the root denary. This really goes in with, of course, Matthew 21:43 of how the fruits of another people, which is, some people might think that that's referring totally to Goyim. Yeah, that really talks about how there is the power for this to even happen, because those lost tribes are still, of course, coming from the 49 gates. And what it's saying here is that the 49 gates, via the nature of Christ, received a form of, for lack of better terms, upgrade. And it references the root denary, which is, of course, the Father, reference to Yod, first letter of the fourfold name. Whereas Yeshua was only able to operate in this base world as a representative of the denary, 50th gate. I say not that I will pray unto my Father for you, for my Father himself loveth you, because you have loved me and have believed that I have come from God. This is reference that those who believe that Moshiach, those believe who Messiah has come from Atziluth, God loves them. God loves them. God favors them, right? They will be blessed. They see Moshiach for who he is. Those who have doubt, remember, we are going back to those who come into the knowledge of Moshiach. It's, like I said, playing with fire. And here we, of course, have it as John 16, 26 to 27. What a sublime confirmation. The Word, this is a nice hint, is united with the Father. By praying to one, we get the aid of both. Our prayer necessarily connects us with the Father. The number 50 disappears when this holy 8 drew near because they couldn't exist together. 8 is consistently referenced as the double spirit, right? This is my own comment, of course. He throughout Louis Claude de Saint Martin's works, he always references 8 as having a double spirit. Assuming the 49 qualities, the power of the 49 gates, but with the unity of the 50. And the power of the 49 gates, remember, part of their power is the fact that they are still tied in with the whole cosmology and the redemptive work in its having to be in its lowly states when it has to be in its lowly states. And thus the unity of 50 cannot dually exist in the lowly state, right? So again, talking about the nature of the relation of 8 and 50. Iniquity and appearance could not survive before unity and its power. This was that divine church, again this reference to the Catholic Church, outside of which no one can be saved and against which the gates of hell can never prevail. Born again Christians are some of the most possessed people I've met at certain times, right? Not all of them, but and like I'm saying, I am not condoning an XY. I'm not. This goes into a very complex topic, right, about the Catholic Church. But guys, there is only one true church, right? According to the promise made to Peter, the first pope. Peter, the first pope. This is again talking about the key that was given to Peter in Matthew 16, 18 to 19. This is the key that opens and no one closes, that closes and no one opens. This is a clear, explicit reference to the Zohar, suggestive that one may attain heaven yet not be saved, right? As in, people can, Muslims can go into a certain gate of Binah, right? This goes in with really the nature of the Neshamot, really goes in with Solomon 4:4, mighty men of all different shields. Someone can attain a nice afterlife yet not be saved, yet not actually be known at all to the Father. Someone can go to heaven yet not be known at all to the Father. This is in reference to the 49 gates of Binah, which are not given access to the unity of the Father. Yet is the 50th that unites and dispels all the iniquities in the unity, giving us the heaven of Atziluth, free from the gates of reincarnation and true eternal heavenly reunification, which even the 49th shall not save one. Even the 49th gate of Binah shall not save one from. Thus we see the body of Christ being the basis of the church referenced in the 50th gate of Binah. This is of course reference to the Eucharist, is the 50th gate of Binah, in that Yeshua was the 50th gate, giving his authority onto Peter, which goes into the idea of the Pope. Now, of course, again, lots of stuff would have gone over many people's heads, but we will progress. Now we have the master of Louis Claude de Saint Martin, his master, his initial initiator, Martinez de Pascali. And this is a very, very profound work here. Really, it just goes back to the first slide. So I will go over this without much comment on it. It's just, if you can perceive this, you can perceive this. If you want to skip ahead, maybe skip ahead, but I definitely wouldn't skip ahead. This is very valuable stuff. So I'm just going to read it. Before time, and I've put in brackets here, this is a little funny link of if you learn certain ideas about what Mormons believe about racial stuff, it basically goes to show that it's not unfounded and it's not. Yeah, we won't comment more on that, but it's just, again, you have this idea that modern Christians really reject this Mormon idea of a pre-existence, which is ultimately rooted in Gnosticism, and then here you have a great Catholic mystic, it's just before time. What do you mean before time? Again, it's just straight Gnosticism in front of your face. Before time and for his glory, God emanated spiritual beings from within his divine immensity. These beings exercised a form of worship fixed for them by God's eternal laws, precepts, and commands. Within these limitations, they were free and distinct from the Creator. These first beings enjoyed free will and had the personal characteristics required to operate the precise form of worship they were required to make and for which they had been created. These beings could not avoid this arrangement with God. By sacred law, they were committed to this great agreement, and they immediately received it with satisfaction from God. It was by this commandment and agreement alone that their emanation was founded. You may ask what these first beings were before their divine emanation, whether or not they ever really existed at all. They existed in the immensity of the Godhead, but without any distinction of action, thought, or any particular understanding, because they could only act or feel through the sole will of the superior being which contained them and which they had lived. This cannot be described as a separate existence, yet this life in God was necessary, constituting the immensity of divine power. God could never have been the Father and Master of all things if he did not have innate within him an inexhaustible source of beings emanated by his pure will and for his pleasure. It is because of this infinite multitude of emanated spiritual beings within him that he bears the name Creator. The first spirits emanated from the bosom of the divine were distinguished by their virtues, powers, and names. They occupied the immense divine circumference. The figure of these higher spirits is 10, the major spirits 8, the inferior spirits 7, and the minor spirits 3. All had to act and operate for the glory of the Creator. These four classes prove they came from the quaternary divine essence. These four classes later came to be known as the cherubim, seraphim, archangels, and angels who emanated later. They knew it was by these superior, major, inferior, and minor powers all was to be emanated. And this is a reference, of course, to what I stated about how the Creator intended for his beings to basically be the rulers as such, under his will, right? But again, we've already touched on that. Could they have known things that were not yet exist as distinctly separate from the Creator? Because they could read clearly what was happening in divinity as they had emanated from this first circle known as the denary, 10, Yod. With everything contained in it, there can be no doubt these first beings had perfect knowledge of all divine actions, since they had emanated from the bosom of the Creator to be witness of his divine operations. Have these beings retained these power following their descent? Yes. They are preserved through the divine decrees of the Eternal One. This is because if the Creator had reversed all the powers he gave them, in which he could have, then there would be no further actions of good nor evil, nor manifested, witnessed glory of the justice of his divine power onto the rebellious spirits. This is basically saying, why didn't God take away the power of these spirits who rebelled afterwards? And he's saying, if he did take away those powers, then there would not be the distinguished witness between good and evil of his own power, basically, right? And that is essential in the sense that wisdom must be wisdom, right? Wisdom must be wisdom, and anything less must be treated as such, especially after the creation of a hierarchy of these four classes of spirits. It can be asked if the Creator foresaw these spirits would rebel against his laws, and would he contain them justly. I would reply, the Creator, foreseeing the hubris and ambition of these rebels, did not and would not stop their criminal thoughts without first depriving them of their innate particular qualities, because they had been created to act upon their free will as secondary causes. This is, of course, affirming the last point, to which the Creator himself took no part in. This again goes in with the sin of Sophia heavy, massive Gnostic talking here. Thus, all these spiritual beings could act according to their free will and determination, as the Creator had promised them. If asked what rebellion these spirits made so that the Creator had to use his divine force against them, I would reply that they were intended in creation to only act as secondary causes that did not exercise their powers over the Creator's primary ones, meaning they have their free will to do what they do, but it needs to be in alignment with the Creator's primary wisdom, which he of course gave them the free will to not do that. This is because they are secondary agents intended only to be concerned with their powers, virtues, and secondary activities, and not in attempting to challenge the Creator's own primary will, thoughts, past, present, or future operations. Massive link to Hokmah there, massive link to the Father there. Their crime was first, a desire to condemn God in his creative works. Second, a desire to limit divine omnipotence in his works. And third, carrying their spiritual thoughts to the point of wishing to be creators of third and fourth level agents / causes themselves, which they knew was innately only inside of the omni-creator himself. How did they condemn the Creator? By assuming that the origin of the Eternal One was equal to their own, and by considering him as similar to themselves. My gosh, is this talking about so many of you bloody, and I hope not many of you are watching, this is talking about so many of these types of mystics who, again, this touches on a loose topic, I don't want to go on a tangent, right? Remember, how many prophets descended to lowly places, right? That's all I'm going to say in terms of, don't think I'm just trying to shame people. But God knoweth the thoughts of man. This is an explicit biblical reference. Cannot remember the verse. I'm sorry. But God knoweth the thoughts of man. God knows, again, we're about to touch on this, in fact. And what I'm basically saying is many occultists, because of their knowledge, are going to end up in Gehenna. Consequently, they thought that they could create spiritual creatures dependent on them, just as they had depended on the one who had made them. Oh my God. Consequently, they thought they could create spiritual creatures dependent on them. Is this not... Guys. This is... So the first word here is they thought, right? This is very important for what's to come. But understand that when they were cast out, they would have enacted this. They would have created spiritual creatures. But remember, Adam is not the same as these spiritual creatures that were dependent on them. And what are these spiritual creatures but these animals in the Garden of Edom that Adam had power over? Pre-Adamic humans. Ham, the youngest son, guys. We must recognize humans for what they are. There's no what has happened in the world, what has been going on. There's no room for a lack of racial anthropological understanding anymore, because it is spiritual. That's the ultimate facet of it, is that it is spiritual. It is impossible to be untwined from that which is spiritual. If you are to subscribe to any ideal of Shekinah manifesting in humans, it is, guys, that is just what it is, right? They thought that they could create spiritual beings dependent on them, just as they depended on the one who had made them. This is called the principle of spiritual evil, since every evil intention conceived by these spirits was criminal before the Creator, even if they did not put them into action. That is there you go. So they had conceived of creating things, which for all intents and purposes, for now, we will call as pre-Adamic humans, to validate some former points and to just show the interlink of all of this. But still, this is easily, of course, referring to different realms, different states, different dimensions of existence, which ultimately as well is talking about Qlippoth, right? If it goes into the nature of hell, is that if someone has lived their life in a certain type of state, for example, They die, they enter the realm that is, they've basically been dependent upon a certain facet of psychology, which psychology is not the right word, but you understand what I mean, of intellectuality, a certain avenue of knowledge that they felt has been exalted. They have been dependent on that, but that such thing has been created by, this is again goes in with how people end up in Gehenna, right? And again, especially those who want to live a totally godless life, and those who are divine, who, anyway. Even if they did not put them into action, it was as punishment for their criminal intent that these evil spirits were cast by the power of the Creator into lonely places of subjugation, deprivation, and impure misery, contrary to the spiritual nature by which their emanation was pure and simple. Having conceived their criminal thoughts against the immutable will and law of the Creator, was created a fixed place. Again, I'll just, because I mentioned pre-Adamic humans again, of course I'm going to mention this is Eden, guys. This is the Hyperborea that they're fucking obsessed with, these retards, where they could act and exercise their malice only in deprivation. Talk about a need for a flood and things of the nature, and it's very, very interesting stuff, right? And we're talking there about as well, especially the outskirts of Eden. Man, as in Adam, was placed at the center, right? But was never intended to embody their natures, but because the Creator allowed his emanation solely to govern the evil spirits being before him. This is explicit reference, of course, as well, going in with the animals in Eden created, right? The animals created on the 5th day. He was made as a being of free will only after the Creator had created this prison and boundary for these prevaricating spirits. So this again touches heavily on the humans that are from Adam, right? Which is white people, for all intents and purposes, easiest way to understand it. That then again fell, right? And that just is what it is. Like I said, there's no need to hate anyone. It's just a need to understand who people are and where they come from. So here we have some profound, this is really, really, really what I've been waiting for. Last 2 slides, right? We have some profound numeric correspondence. The most pure value of the world Bariya, which has of course been referenced loads. The most pure value is 217. Beit, Reish, Yod, Che gives us 217. Now, if we take John 2:17, right? Sorry, from 1 John 2:17, and if we take every first letter, of course, highlighted in the orange, and we do the 1 to 27 ordinal, extremely, extremely pure Greek cipher, like literally the second most pure bar, the standard. Right, so easy to see why it's so pure. Every first letter of 217 gives us 217. And what is being said, like I said, about this idea of what Binah is, about how it is the heaven that we come to know as heaven in an easy understanding. The world is passing away with its lusts, but he who does God's will remains forever. The Church Fathers' mastery. Everything I'm saying is heavily, heavily tied in with New Testament stuff. Wouldn't the authors of the New Testament thus have to be deeply, deeply initiated? The fools of Christians, fools of men. These are, I'm not even gonna. But if we take every single last letter and we apply reduction, right, which is giving just a single digit value, 1 to 9, right? So the 27th letter is going to be valued 9, right? The 10th letter is going to be valued 1, because 1 plus 0 is 1. We take every last letter, including these singulars, right? Which of course you have to include. We get 67. Every last letter gives 67, which is the pure value of Binah. How powerful is that? Here, Revelation 21:1, a quote from it. I saw a new heaven. I saw a new heaven. 1 to 27 ordinal, we get 217. just having been slain to death. Revelation 13:13. This is in reference to the beast. This is in reference to the Antichrist. Having been slain to death. Yeah, very, very, very profound avenues we could take, but we'll be going on tangents here. But there's been enough expounded upon the nature of Sophia, both her holy life and death, the holiness in her death, the unholiness in her life. Like, it's paradoxical, but the perfect ordinal value of 217, having been slain to death, when referring to this beast, who for all intents and purposes, remember, comes out of an ocean. The power of him. Now, in Revelation 13:2, again, when referring to the power of the beast, which is coming from this great serpent, we take the 27-1 reverse ordinal. The power of him, again, is 217. And we take the reverse ordinal of Revelation 13:1. Again, how much have we referenced the crowns, the heads? And we've already explained that's the mystery of Reish. The letter Reish. Upon the heads. Upon the heads. Upon 217 in the reverse ordinal. And here we have such a profound, I will let down the nets. Here we have a redemptive, unholy, holy, again, correspondence in the reverse ordinal. Luke 5:5, I will let down the nets. How many references is there to nets whilst dealing with fishermen, right? I can even think of the book of Jonah. Anyway, if we take the full reverse reduction, right, which is not so pure of a cipher, but it's 100% worth including in this context because we're dealing with a full verse. Remember, everything stated here is, of course, just little fragments, which is why we have to use these quite significantly pure ciphers, or we have to provide a reason for why we're doing it if it's another bit of a cipher, but nonetheless, when we have a full verse, right, and we have especially something that is still significantly pure in reverse reduction, right, giving 9-1, which is just reverse ordinal but then reduced. An angel from heaven appeared to him, strengthening him, which is why it's really worth mentioning, because it just again goes to show this connection of what Binah Bria is. Now, if we take the full verse, right, of Hebrews 1:11, in the reduction, regular reduction, again, very, very, very pure. Regular reduction is so important for when you have long verses that are giving you crazy numbers. They shall perish, but thou remainest, and they shall wax as doeth a garment. Hebrews 1:1, full reduction, 217. Wow. Powerful. Like, if you understand deeper implications of garment, which is multifaceted, powerful, powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. Now, if we do even more pure reverse, right? If we take reverse ordinal to be very pure, then reverse standard is extremely pure. And for the word ethos, the simple term ethos, which basically means the sentiment or the qualities, the inherent nature, right? And especially ethos is referring, it goes in with the etymology of ether. I don't know if there's any evidence to back that up, but it's just, I see it for what it is, right? And you should too. But the quality, the sentiment of each spirit, again, as we understand what Bria is, as mentioned by Martinez de Pascali, where they were exiled to, where they were sent to. I mean, yes, the value 217, which is the perfect value of air, the most pure standard value of air, right, in Hebrew, which is just a permutation, an anagram, just a very simple anagram of and saw, right, and saw in Genesis 1:4, meaning and saw the light. Again, very powerful, very, very, very powerful. right? This is reference to the connection in heavily connected with Yetzirah, heavily connected between Bria and Yetzirah. Just powerful, right? Okay. Now, if we take the full ordinal value, 1 to 22, of Hebrew, again, so pure, second most pure cipher, of Psalm 94:5, they crush thy people, O Lord, and afflict thy heritage. Again, reference to the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, and what we understand at a very surface level to be God's chosen, right? Which, if you understand the verse in Song of Solomon 4:4, right, it goes in with deep, what's it called? Because I haven't really studied it even. That's the thing about my level of initiation. If you're someone who's highly initiated, like, reach out to me, because I need initiates. I really need initiates, because I don't speak Hebrew. Like, if you speak Hebrew and you understand who Western Europeans are, like, hit me the fuck up, because there's just, yeah, no. We're getting into oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot this term. It's a specific type of Kabbalah. Lyrianic. Thank goodness I remembered that. Lyrianic Kabbalah. We're touching upon a topic of debate in Lyrianic Kabbalah, right? Which is basically if someone is to, because of course there's the inherent knowledge, the inherent understanding, which is rooted in the wisdom that the chosen, right? They are rooted from like their soul is rooted. It's a soul thing. You're not just born. You can't. It's nothing insignificant to be born into the house of Jacob. I cannot state how much of a principle, how much of principle knowledge that is inside of Kabbalah. So there's this debate: if someone is to convert to the house of Jacob because they have reached a spiritual level where they basically are capable, which is again just the easy way to phrase it. Was their soul of the house of Jacob? Were they chosen? And the answer is yes, right? The answer is yes, and this really goes in with the Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 4, right? Where all of the shields refers to a coat of arms, which refers to your lineage, right? It's this idea that the children of Jacob are known to be able to, of course, stray, go into exile, all of these types of things. So different souls who are very powerful souls, yet incarnate outside of God's chosen. This really is this is going in with this debate in the Lyrianic Kabbalah, and it's just very powerful stuff, very powerful stuff. It goes in with this idea so heavily of lost tribes, right? But, this is as well telling you about where they come from, right? They afflict thy heritage, they crush thy people, and it's an explicit reference to Binah, which you've already explained. The 49 gates is one of the great mysteries of that, is the 49 letters of the 12 tribes, the 12 sons. Again, we have a nice little reference of this, of both the Song of Solomon kind of verse, similarly, of course, with the chosen, as incarnate and as known as they are visibly, right? Which is, of course, the house of Jacob as we know it, that identifies, and all of us lost who genetically, anthropologically are provable. It's all provable. All the evidence is there. And that's something I'm going to touch on in future videos, but I don't know, man. I just have a feeling that the algorithm is just going to, like, blacklist the fuck out of it, right? They don't really like, and who is they? If you want to know about they, it's Rome, it's the Jesuits. They don't like Western Europeans realizing that they are the lost tribes. They really don't like it. But of Galilee, from Matthew 2:22, which is of course as well a reference to Egypt, right? In that this is the scripturally Matthew 2:13 to 2:23 is Jesus' time in Egypt. Here I won't explain what the Achbi cipher is, but it's fine. You don't need to know. You can search it up if you want to know what Achbi is. It's to do with the number 20 and flipping, right? 11 and 20. Anyway, the value of Nukva, which is a real hint and reference to the divine feminine, almost the power of Tipareth to identify as Yisrael. Nukva is in HP 217. Again, a great reference, a great link back to Baria, the mother, right? Ima, etc. Now we take the full verse of Song of Solomon 4:17, and oh my gosh, is this not just the most great evidence of... We take the full reduction of this verse, 1 to 9, right? 1 to 9, again, so pure, very, very, very pure. Reduction is very, very pure, so valid, right? When you're dealing with a whole verse. If you have a super connection, right, which I'm about to show you ones on the next slide, but if you have a super connection between high values in a pure standard value through full verses, that is insane. That's insane connection, cannot be ignored, right? Neither can ordinal. Ordinal, when the ordinal is matching in a full verse, powerful, so powerful. But reduction is so totally valid, so valid when you're dealing with full verses. That's all I'm going to state. So the full reduction of Song of Solomon 4:16 is 217 again. And this translates directly to awake, O north wind, and come south wind, blow up my garden, and its spices may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. So many implications inside of that, and the confirmation of this, again, this goes in massively anthropologically, right? Lebanon, what is Lebanon? We're referring to basically the Phoenicians, right? Heavily connected with the Phoenicians, which are a great mystery of Britain. A great mystery of Britain, a great mystery of Spain, a great mystery of the Celts, of how the Celtic languages have Semitic grammar, something that is literally hidden, persecuted by the Catholic Church so much. So it's an absolute fact. It's an absolute fact that modern anthropology refuses to acknowledge, right, in our modern understanding of Indo-European languages, that Celtic people, right, who were they? If we understand Rome to be Esau, and Esau is going to be against Jacob, there is no one but Rome who has genocided the Celtic people, done so much damage to the Celtic people, which, again, we understand who was the god of the Celts, Baal, the Canaanite Druid religion. How is all this stuff existing? This is just a fucking sliver of the evidence. But here, Song of Solomon 4:11 in the same chapter, again, reduction 1 to 9, the full verse. Thy lips, right? The circumcision of the tongue, the mouth, the oral Torah, as reference to Binah, as reference to the 12 tribes who have access to the oral Torah. The circumcision of the lips, it's just powerful. Thy lips, O my spouse, a drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. Garments, the garment in Lebanon. Remember, who had to wear the garment of Esau, of Edom, to receive the blessing from Isaac? And who was favored by Rebecca? Powerful. Okay. The divide between Esau and Jacob will not be expounded upon here. However, as mentioned, being in the head of the mother, where the 50th gate must be opened, it is very interesting, this divide we see occur in Genesis of light and dark. Like it is foretold to Rebecca that 2 nations shall dwell in her room, right? In her womb, in Genesis 25. When assigning values only 1 to 9 reduction, the full verse of Genesis 32:16 is again 217. And this literally translates to, and he delivered them into so this is referring to Jacob, of course. This is Jacob now doing what he's doing. And he delivered them into the hands of his servants. Every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put a space between drove and drove. Right? This is referring to the gifts of the animals that Jacob was giving to Esau. Right? And it's just very, very powerful that you have this divide occurring explicitly in the pure full verse being 217, which, as mentioned in all of this, just you see all of the connections. You initiates, you who are on your level, below or above me in your understanding, just amazing stuff. Now this is the last one. Now there is a specific cipher called Avgad. Avgad is such a powerful cipher. It's just simply where you basically give every single letter the next value in terms of the standard, the most pure. So you take the most pure, where you go 1 to 10, right? Yod is the 10th letter, so it has the value 10, right? Then the 11th letter, Kaf, is 20, right? The 19th letter is 100, right? Then the 20th letter, 200, 21st, 300, Tav, 400, 22nd letter, 400. What you do is you shift everything over. So the first letter, Aleph, now has the value of 2. It's that simple. And then Tav, the last letter, has the value of 1, right? Has the value of 1, right? Because Shin, the 21st, now has the value of 400, right? It's just shifted basically 1 over, like behind to the next. The next, it is chronologically, which I guess puts it actually backwards in a way, right? Nonetheless, this Avgad cipher is extremely powerful, extremely mystical, right? And when we take the full Avgad of Psalm 9:9, right, we get the value of 2004. And this this is powerful because it all links back to the 217, right? The full value of this is, and he will judge the world in its righteousness. He will minister judgment to the peoples with iniquity. Or with equity, sorry. Not with iniquity. With equity. He'll judge fairly. Then we take the next psalm. Psalm 9:10. The full standard, the full most pure value, right, of Psalm 9:10 is 2004, meaning the Lord also will be a high tower for the oppressed, a high tower in times of trouble. And they have the exact same gematria, consecutive, when you use this mystical cipher of Avgad. It's powerful. What are the odds of that? What are the chances? Now here's the thing. We take the full standard, most pure of the full verse of Genesis 3:20, right? Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all the living. Powerful. Here we have mass confirmation again of identity of Eve and this mother, this Binah, this very very powerful. And we take every first letter, right, from Titus, the book of Titus, of course, written by Paul the Apostle. Titus 3:14. Let our people also learn to maintain good works for necessary uses, that they may not be unfruitful. And what did we have last here? Now, I don't want to go on a tangent, but again, it's talking about fruit in the garden, right? Queen Sheba, I believe, is narrating this. I might be wrong in that, but I do heavily believe that it is the Queen of Sheba referring and speaking in this. And that they may not be unfruitful. Let our people also learn to maintain good works for necessary use. Yeah, we won't expound upon that, right? But every first letter in the standard, not even ordinal, not even 1 to 27. Now we're taking the standard of Greek, right? Which is, of course, valued 1 to 900, right? In the same way that the Hebrew, the 22nd letter, is 400. Now 27 will be 900. Every first letter gives the same 2004. And the full reverse ordinal. The full reverse ordinal, again, talking especially about he would minister judgment of people with equity. Talking about, again, this is a massive key of prophets descending into lowly places, right? He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. The full reverse ordinal, 27-1, very pure cipher. The full value in Revelation 13:10. And again, this is the same chapter talking of the beast. This is... Jeez, guys. Yeah, but full value, 2004. But when we take the full reduction of Psalm 9:8 to 9:9, both two verses together, as we've started with the Avgad, of course, of Psalm 9:9, the full 1-9 reduction of both of these verses put together brings us back to where we started with these numeric values. We get the 217. But the Lord is enthroned forever. He hath established his throne for judgment, and he will judge the world in righteousness. He will minister judgment to the peoples with equity. And that is the slide done, lads. Just, yeah, boys. Holy man, holy and unholy man. May you maintain good works for necessary uses, all of you. May you maintain good works for necessary uses. And may you not be unfruitful in your necessary works. And you're hearing this from my voice. The voice of Jacob, but it has come from the hands of Esau. What is Esau? Like I said, Esau is genocided my Celtic ancestors. But Esau is Christianity. Esau is Christianity. And this touches upon many, many deep mysteries. But shalom. May the blessings of Hashem come towards you. May you seek to reunify your connection with the divine to its highest capacity. Peace and love. Take care.